welcome back to Practice Intimacy. This is the place to be for advice on love, relationships, and sexuality. I am Jami Lynn, and today what we're going to be talking about is scheduled time with your partner. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel if you want more content about relationship, love, and sex, and leave any comments or questions that you have below, please, because I do read them. And I love getting feedback because it helps me to understand what you would like more of. So today, we are going to talk about scheduling time together. And I find that this is particularly useful for people who've been in a relationship for a period of time. So early on in a relationship, you've already got scheduled time together. You don't live together. You're coming somewhere to meet each other. There is a defined period of time of how long you'll be together. And that might be for a date. That might be for a weekend. Who knows? But there's already this built-in scheduled time. So really when I'm talking about scheduled time, at least in this video, I'm thinking more about people who've been in a relationship together for a while. They're used to seeing each other around the house. They have plenty of time together, and yet it's more of like a diffuse, we're just around each other kind of time, rather than an intentional, here's what we're doing with our time. And what I'm going to advocate for is this second type of scheduling, where you're creating an intention around, here's why we want to spend time together, here's what we're going to use it for, and everything else will be put on the wayside during that time. So I'm just going to list them briefly, and then I'll go into a little bit more detail. But right now, there are 4 different kinds of time that I want to share with you for you to just consider. You don't have to do them all at once. Some might sound really exciting. Some might sound like, blech, I don't want to do that. That sounds terrible. But just consider each one and see if maybe there's a place for you to do them in your relationship. So the first one would be scheduling time for check-ins. The second one is scheduling time for play. Next would be scheduling time to play together that has a more sexual, sensual component to it. And then the last one is scheduling time to experiment. So these first 2 are more about relational health, and the second 2 are more about sexual health. And like I said, I'll go into each one with more detail, and you can decide which ones you want to try to start bringing into your relationship. So let's go with the first one, scheduling time for check-ins. This one has more to do with relational upkeep. I kind of think of this as the housekeeping one. During a check-in, I might talk to my partner about finances, or wanting to move and how we're going to move and when we're going to move. I might talk to them about wanting to plan a vacation and looking at plane tickets for that vacation. I might want to talk to them about how I didn't like the way that they parented our kid earlier. Can we discuss that? Or, hey, there was something that you said to me earlier this week and it hurt my feelings. Are you in a place where we could talk about it? And those don't necessarily have to happen during a check-in, but they could. Check-in it can be anything that you want it to be. Think about the things in your relationship that usually aren't particularly fun to talk about. It's usually not too much fun to talk about finances or choosing a plane ticket or that thing that happened between us that wasn't great and I want to work on it with you. Those aren't exactly fun, but they're necessary. They need to happen. And so think about in your life, in your relationship, those things that each one of you tend to avoid talking about. And imagine creating time where you would have a check-in about it, where you intentionally make space to only discuss this thing that is hard. And for this particular one, really for all of them, but for the harder conversations like this one, I would suggest having a time limit to it. Have an agreed amount of time that the check-in will last. Usually 30 minutes is enough. And set a timer. Don't go over that time. Don't let yourself go beyond the bounds of the agreement, if you do not finish having the conversation today, you're going to have another check-in. Try it again then. And that is the whole point of this time, is to create space where you can have some discomfort that is productive, and you also know that it is contained. This is not going to last forever. This is when we do this. We will come back to it if we need to. I mean, we'll come back to something. And then we'll move on with the rest of our day once that 30 minutes is up. And so one of the ways I suggest doing this check-in, I personally think that weekly is a good rhythm for this kind of a meeting. Usually once a week is a great rhythm. You might find that you don't want to meet that often, but initially as you're setting this up, as you're getting used to it, as you're becoming comfortable with the experience of leaning a little into things that you don't normally talk about, do it more frequently so your system, your nervous system, gets used to it and you begin to build trust around it. So a good rhythm is weekly. 30 minutes is usually enough, but find the time that works for you. And my suggestion is that in addition to having the check-in, you somehow make this pleasant for one another. You could have the check-in in a place that feels really good. Your patio, your kitchen table, your couch, who knows, maybe your favorite restaurant. And then after that 30 minutes, you transition into something that feels really good. So I've known couples where during the check-in, there's a little ritual and routine where they have a cheese plate and a glass of wine, and they have those 30 minutes, and as soon as that's over, they transition to something else. They either move spaces and they continue the cute snack somewhere else, or now the snack is done, we're gonna go for a walk together, we're gonna transition. So have boundaries around this check-in, where you do it, you do things to help it be a little bit more enjoyable for both of you, or all of you. And then you move into something else whenever the timer goes off. You do not stay in it. You let yourself transition, knowing that there will always be more meetings and you will come back to this as needed. The next kind of meeting that I suggest people often schedule is play. Most people call this date nights, or whatever time of day it might be, but a lot of people think about it as date nights. Ideally, you are taking the time to do something with your partner that is just for fun. And again, this is something that I would suggest doing weekly. If you are in a space where you can do it more than once a week, awesome, do that. But once a week is a minimum for this. We've got to play with each other in order to have a good relationship. We've got to carve out time that is just for fun and just for being intimate and connected and enjoyment. Ways that you can go about doing this one. So part of all of this, I didn't say this in the beginning, so I'll say it now. Part of all of this is you actually need to schedule it. Put this on a calendar. Have a reminder that's going to pop up 30 minutes before it happens, and prioritize this time. If you move it around, make sure you move it within the same week, but ideally always keep it at the same time so that it's a routine. And with date night, something fun that you can do, because if you're doing this once a week, you can kind of get into routines of like, here's the thing we do on date night. Something I really like that one of my good friends did, they had 3 different jars and popsicle sticks. And the 3 different jars represented like the mood of the particular date and also the cost. They had one jar that was free, one jar that was like medium cost, and one jar that was more expensive. And the popsicle sticks, they had writing that depicted a mood. So one mood was like romantic, one mood was outdoors, one mood was, it wasn't outdoors, it was active. This would not work for everyone, I know. This is getting a little too detailed for some people. So for you, you could just have one jar and a bunch of popsicle sticks. And on each popsicle stick, they wrote down a potential date that they could have, something that they thought would be fun and that they would do in the future. And then it went into the different jars, and they would pull out the one that matched the expense and the mood that they were hoping for that evening, and they would go do it, which I think is an awesome way to do date night. It's fun, it's creative. It is definitely a little bit of work on the front end, but if you're like, ooh, that sounds like a great plan, then try it. That might work really well for you. For other people, it might just be like, let's make a list of all the things we're interested in doing together. And on our date nights, we'll pick out something from the list and go for it. So the third one is scheduling time to be sensual or sexual. A lot of people, they are not interested in scheduling sex, even though that can be really useful for some people, especially whenever you have children in the house and you need to plan like, okay, how are we gonna make this happen? What time can we come together in this way and it actually work out rather than being frustrated? But that's not true for everyone. Some people are not interested in scheduling sex, and that's okay. That's actually not what I'm suggesting. When I say schedule time to be sensual and sexual, I mean do things together intentionally that are not meant to lead into sex, but instead are just meant to help you relax into that kind of energy. So have 20 minutes where you give each other massages, or schedule an evening where you're going to take a hot bath together with some candles. Schedule an evening where you're just going to lay in bed together and hold one another. Schedule time to do practices like tantra yoga together or eye gazing. Anything that is going to be a little bit more in the sensual realm, activities that would open you up to feeling more sexual, but that aren't necessarily about having sex. That's not the point of this. The point is just to create space to connect to one another, feel more turned on, feel a little bit vulnerable and comfortable at the same time. Both are important. Vulnerable is exciting, comfortable is necessary in order to do the thing. The last thing that I would suggest scheduling, I think of it as experimental time. This is like, we're gonna go to the lab and we're going to test some theories. Who knows what will happen? I have no idea. And this is actually in the realm of sex. So, most people who've been in a relationship for a long time, they know the feeling of times whenever sex becomes kind of, I don't have a better word right now, so boring. It can become kind of boring sometimes, where you're like, yeah, I want to have sex and this is nice, this is fine, but it's not particularly exciting. And it feels kind of routine. We do the same old things. Our body knows how to meet each other and what we do, and then we're done. Not a bad thing. It's really not. This is normal. This is a healthy part of relationship. Once you've been in relationship for a while, there are periods of time where sex is a little bit like, okay, I'm doing this because I love you and because I want to, but it's not particularly exciting at the moment. And one way that you can combat that is to add experiment into your life. So again, I would suggest having a container for this. I would set a timer. 20 minutes is usually plenty. If each one of you want to take 10 of that, you can, or if you want to alternate where it's one person's week and then another person's week, do that, whatever works best for you. And in those 20 minutes, all you're going to do is try new things that you're like, I wonder if this would be fun, or I've had this fantasy and it sounds interesting, but I don't know if I'm actually gonna like it. And the point of this time is to just see. Just try it out and see. It might be a total flop and you hated it, or it might be something amazing that you're like, oh my God, that was awesome. We really need to add this into our sex life from now on, please. And it could be anything in between. And so what might you experiment with in this realm? You might experiment with different kinds of touch. You might experiment with new toys or a particular dynamic. Like you might want to try on a kink dynamic and see what does this feel like? This is brand new. How would it be if we adopt a little bit more of a sub-dom type of role together? And usually the feeling of experiments is more in the realm of like playful curiosity than it is about sexy sensual. Sexy sensual can absolutely happen in these spaces too, but really the feeling is more like, oh, I'm curious, I don't know. Let's play together in this way and see what happens. And there's no particular expectation for it to go any way. There is a whole realm of possibilities, and we are open to whatever unfolds. Awesome. I hope that is helpful. I know that there are so many other different kinds of things that people might schedule together, and I'll probably go into those in other videos. But today I just wanted to hit these 4 because they feel like the most important ones to me in the realm of relationship, both the actual relational side and the sexual side. These feel like particularly important ones to start building into your routine and your practices with your partner. And just to sum them up one more time, it's check-ins, play, sensual sexual time, and experimentation. All of them should have containers around here's how much time we'll spend together, here's the day we're going to do it together, here's how often we're going to do it together. I would suggest weekly, especially at first. And then find what works for y'all. Let this be an experiment in and of itself. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.